Hi and welcome. This is Lisa Fain. I am CEO of Center for Mentoring Excellence, but here in my capacity as an ambassador to the board of the International Mentoring Association for the continuation of our series of expert interviews. And I'm thrilled today to be here with Dr. Rimjhim Banerjee-Batist, who is an associate professor in the business development at Santa Fe College in Gainesville, Florida. She's also the lead faculty of business administration. She teaches classes in human resources management, in international business, in principles in management, introduction to business, and workforce and diversity. You could have a whole major just with Dr. Batiste herself. And she teaches the internship and professional development class to students in the business administration, office systems technology, and paralegal programs. She's got 30 years of teaching experience spanning high school, undergrad, and graduate education. And she's got expansive research in mentoring, attachment, emotional intelligence, faculty development, organizational outcomes, human resources development, career development, program evaluation, and program development. She's published in many academic journals, in conference proceedings, and book chapters on mentoring in higher education, including junior faculty mentoring and doctoral student mentoring. She'll tell us about much of her current research, but among her latest publications is a chapter called Career Development Challenges for Women Pursuing Leadership in India. It's in the book called Indian Women in Leadership, as well as Mentoring Functions and Outcomes, an integrative literature review of sociocultural factors and individual differences in the Human Resources Development Review. She's the book of Attachment and Mentoring Functions of Career and Psychosocial Support, which is about relationships with job satisfaction, organizational commitment, and intent to turnover. And interestingly, she's currently working on a collaborative research project exploring the leadership response to the COVID-19 pandemic in educational sectors of the US and in India. She specializes in mentoring in higher education, accreditation of higher education assessment systems, and graduate education program assistance. Rimjhim, welcome.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for that wonderful introduction. I'm really honored to be here and be talking about my research and what excites me about mentoring. I'm also very thankful to the International Mentoring Association for this opportunity.
So excited to talk to you. You know, one of our goals with these interviews is to highlight the scholarship of people like yourself. And so I know you've got a lot of great things to share. So I'm excited to dive in. So let's start, Rimjhim, with why don't you talk to us a little bit about why mentoring interests you?
Well, the very core of mentoring is to develop someone. And development, like none of us are born perfect. And we would love to develop. And yes, we can develop ourselves, but if we have someone who would guide us, mentor us, and lead us to another place where we are a better individual and we contribute better to where we work, where we live, to the world in general, the world will be a better place. So mentoring from that aspect, does good through the individual to the society. And that's why I was interested in mentoring.
That's great. So I know you're working on great stuff. Tell us a little bit about the focus of your current research and what you found.
Well, I'll be talking about several things. This response will probably be the longest. So obviously, I started out doing a literature review of the mentoring literature for a period of 35 years, from 1980s to 2017. And in that period, obviously, there's a lot of research that has happened in the field of social cultural factors like gender, ethnicity, culture, age, not that much, but gender, ethnicity, race, that's the major lens through which mentoring has been researched on. Something about culture, when I was doing the lit reviews in my earlier part of research days, I found that there are some studies on national culture and how national culture may impact or have some relation to the quality of mentoring and what kind of mentoring would be best suited. And that actually brought me later on to focus on India, because India has, every nation has different cultures. And so India has different culture, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, but national culture is something I thought would be interesting to look at. The other thing that came out of that lit review was that as much as the sociocultural factors have been looked at, individual differences like personality, like cognitive styles, like learning goal orientation or attachment styles, those kind of things haven't been delved into much in the research. And obviously if research is not done, then it doesn't go into practice, right? So, obviously corporations and other places that institute mentoring programs, they are not looking to look at the individual differences of mentors and proteges. They're mainly, when they do match mentors with proteges, they're looking at maybe similarity of gender, similarity of ethnicity, you know, those kind of things. And they are not going further to look at individual differences. So that's something that stuck out. So that led me to my first area of research. So I took attachment style as an individual difference to probe. And attachment style, I first need to explain what it is our early childhood experiences with our figures that we are most attached to it. Normally they're parents, but any figure that we are attached to in our early years as a child, as a toddler, that experience creates what we called some internal models, working models within us, and we become a person with a secure attachment style, or we become a person with an avoidant attachment style, or a dismissive attachment style, or an anxious attachment style. So there are 4 categories. So among those, secure attachment style has been found to be the ones that are most, like they have capacity to trust others. They know that because they were able to trust that early attachment figure, and they could explore the world and they could develop. So if they have secure attachment style further on in life, in other relationships, they are able to trust others. And the other attachment styles, they have problems in that respect, in developing that kind of one-on-one relationship. So for example, the anxious ones, anxious attachment styles, they would love to trust others, but they would overly love to trust. They will be overly dependent. And that sometimes the other person might consider that to be a very clingy attitude. So that wouldn't be, you know, that kind of very functional relationship.
How do you determine, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but how do you determine an attachment style? Is it an assessment that you give somebody?
Yes, so yeah. there are assessment instruments that are already out there that have been validated and used in research. So attachment style has been used in research with work-related behaviors and work outcomes. Hazen and Shaver are some big names in attachment style research with work behaviors. So as I was saying, the avoidant, so there's the anxious, and then there's the avoidant. The avoidant ones are those that actually avoid getting too close to people. And so then that impacts how they have those one-on-one relationships. And then the dismissive ones, they totally dismiss the importance of other people in their lives, in the sense that they are superly independent and they think that they got everything under control and they don't need any kind of help from anybody, which is good if that's the case. But, you know, I think that we all need somebody's help or the other in our life.
Right,
Support.
right.
Yeah,
right.
support. So anyway, so those are the 4 attachment styles. So, and when I was doing the review of literature, I did found some studies that were done with college students on their attachment styles and their success in getting the support in mentoring. So those kind of studies looked at, freshmen and their mentoring relationships with peers, like 1 or 2 years senior to them, or with faculty. So I took this, in my research, I did junior faculty. So I did mentoring of junior faculty by senior faculty when they first start off in their faculty careers. So as we know, faculty careers have a 3-pronged approach in most places, which is research, teaching, and service. And when people just get into academe, they are like overwhelmed with the pressure of all 3, especially research and teaching. And then they have to learn the ropes of the organization. They have to know the department. They have to know the entire university or college. So having a mentor at that stage, if the department would have a formal mentoring, or even informally, if they find a mentor, I wanted to look at how that would impact their job satisfaction, their commitment to the organization, i.e. the university or the college they have just been hired in, and if they are feeling a burnout and intent to turn over, if they just want to quit. So so I looked at that. I looked at the attachment styles, and I looked at I surveyed them about the career support and the psychosocial support they're receiving from the senior faculty who is their mentor. And this was in a formal mentoring program at a 4-year university. And just to, I'm sure the audience knows about career support and psychosocial support, because those are the 2 main forms of support that a mentor provides. So what I found is that the secure attachment styles, like we envisioned or hypothesized, that prodigies with secure attachment styles, they did have positive relations with their positive correlations with job satisfaction, their organizational commitment, and intent to turnover. And we also found that the same thing is for the mentors. So I surveyed both mentors and prodigies. So that I found that it had a positive correlation. I also found that independently, if I looked at career support, it did have a positive correlation with job satisfaction and organizational commitment, and obviously a negative correlation with intent to turnover. Mm-hmm. When I looked at psychosocial support, I found the same thing: positive correlation with job satisfaction and organizational commitment, and negative correlation with intent to turnover. Now, when I looked at attachment style and say career support for prodigies, I found that they interacted. So there was an interaction effect, which means that career support strengthened that positive correlation. So if they had a high quality career support from the mentor, and they had a secure attachment style, the prodigy I'm talking about, then they experienced higher degree of organizational commitment and a lowered intent to turnover. Mm-hmm. So that was something exciting. It was the only empirical research right now that is out there that links attachment with mentoring with work outcomes such as job satisfaction and organizational commitment and intent to turnover. So that was exciting. Now, there were limitations to that research. Obviously, it was a cross-sectional study, so it was data collected at one point of time. And at that point of time, 50% of the mentees or the prodigies they just had started the mentoring program. So if I went after, and if I would have collected data later, maybe I would have found more results, but I just collected data at that point. But still, I would say there are practical implications, because organizations would know right away if their mentees had secure attachment styles. They have that in them to be a good mentee. Okay. Now, this research also made me think about that I am categorizing people based on attachment style, and I'm saying this person would be better versus that person won't be suited that well. But I began to think harder, and I thought, but mentoring itself is a developmental process. So how would it be if the mentoring itself would change a person's internal model? Say if you are insecure, you are avoidant, or you are, anxious and all that, and the mentor is such a person in your life, such an important person in your life, that he or she is able to, change that from your early childhood experience, change you to, be a secure. And I wondered about that, if that is possible, and no one has researched that yet. So that was that. And then I just want to switch quickly to the national culture area that piqued my interest. And I got an opportunity to do this research in India. And India's national culture is that of, it has a high power distance orientation, which means there's a lot of respect and conformity to authority and authority figures. It's also a collectivist culture. It's not me and my interests, which is the highest at the top of my mind. It's of everybody. And also India is, as far as performance orientedness, India is moderate. So like the US and the Western European countries are high in performance orientation, which means that, competitiveness and material wealth, these things are much more valued. Whereas India is moderate. It's not low, but it's moderate. So yes, they do place emphasis on high performance in jobs and careers, but not overly. They're not overly competitive in the workplace. So anyway, taking all that into account, when I interviewed 2 women leaders there, one was in academia and one was in corporate. So they shared their stories through the interviews of how their leadership development was in a culture like in India, and how they could rise through the ranks and be leaders. So just to give you a little background, only 3.2% of leaders in India are women. So all over the world, we know that the numbers are pretty dismal, but India's numbers are worse. So the junior managers are 28.7% are women, then middle level are around 14%, and the top level is only 3.2%. So it really is like a leaking pipeline, when you have a pipe and water just drips. So one of the biggest issues they have is the lack of work-life balance, the flex times, just to be a mother, for example, and attend meetings and take care of their children, and the infrastructure in workplaces there. At least these women, when they were junior managers and so be it, it was pretty hard for them. Now maybe after 30 years things have changed, definitely, but these women are that I talked to, they're senior leaders. So when they described to me how mentors help them, so what I found is that in the culture that I'm talking about, that a power distance orientation that they have, where they listen and they respect the elders. So a mentor was like an older person to them, and they would respect and they would really listen to what they have to say and how they advise them to create long-term career goals, and how they would from time to time just check in on them and see where they are, where they're going. And another thing that India has is that they let people in their workplaces know a lot about their personal lives. So these two women, at least, they let their mentors be totally involved in, you know, what's happening on the personal front. So I saw that they got a lot of psychosocial support from the mentor. Obviously, they got career support, but they got a lot of psychosocial support, which I think for women, and it says that in the literature too, that women are more relationship oriented. So in a country like India where they got that, you know, that's something that I found through interviewing them, that that's how they survived and they thrived and they reached their leadership position. So this is the book. I just wanted to show you how it looks.
So beautiful.
Indian Women in Leadership, and the chapter where I talk about the career development challenges and development, that's on chapter 4 of this book. But there are several authors who write about different of leadership and in different sectors, like government sector, nonprofit sector, you know. So if someone is interested in women in leadership and different countries, actually Palgrave Macmillan, the other publishers, and this is a series. So this is the book on India, then they have one for China, they have one for South Korea. So it's so this is the book on India.
Great. We'll put a link to it in the notes for the folks who are watching this on YouTube. You can you can have a link to Rimjhim's to the book Rimjhim's mentioning with her chapter in it, and just click on that. So I know you've also done some research on emotional intelligence. I'd love if you could just share a little bit with us about that.
Yes. So all this made me, when I was looking at individual differences, I did see some conceptual papers talking about conflict resolution styles and conflict resolution skills, and you know, so one of the things that I teach, you know, in human resource management, or I'm trying to inculcate in my students in internship classes, is to have, or is first of all to emphasize the importance of soft skills in today's workplaces.
Mm-hmm.
Today's workplaces have evolved from being manufacturing oriented to being more service oriented, right? So whether you're talking about the hospitality, whether you're talking about healthcare, you're talking about education, we are all service oriented, right? So soft skills, even though if you have the technical skills, but if you don't have soft skills, and that's where I'm bringing it back to conflict resolution, or, you know, being able to just listen, you know, active listening. There's a difference between listening and not listening, right? You think someone is listening to you, but they're not, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So active listening, to be able to respond to the customer's needs, you know, because we are a service-oriented economy. So that made me zoom in on emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence, though it was, you know, promulgated a long time back, but the importance of emotional intelligence in performance has been already documented. Like, we may have natural intelligence, we may be sharp, we have a high IQ and whatnot, but there is something lacking if we are not able to perform to our best at the workplace. And that something lacking is the emotional intelligence. So if you won't mind, I will share a couple slides.
That'd be great.
So this is just a regular model of the organizational behavior where we have input, we have process, we have outcomes. So all I've done is, instead of employee characteristics, I'm saying mentee characteristics. So because I'm going to tie in this with mentoring. So these are basically people or employees that are in the organization. And we are saying that they will be mentees. So they are the inputs because they are what make up the human capital of an organization. They are the ones who do the work, right? So the process, in the process, what they bring and what happens in the process of doing work is that they are bringing in their emotions, they are bringing in their perceptions, they are being motivated to work or not work, or put in their best effort. That is not work or not work, but put in their best efforts. They are taking decisions, they are participating in teamwork, and a lot of times they are resolving conflicts. So that's all happening in the process stage in the organizational behavior model. Mm-hmm. And then the outcomes, the outcome at the level of the employee, at the level of that individual, is the person's attitudes, stress, their performance, the individual performance, their satisfaction, their engagement to their work, their commitment to the organization, and sometimes citizenship behaviors. If they are really happy and engaged, they love to be good citizens in the organization. So this is not my model. This is just the organizational behavior model. But where I'm going with this is that when the person has a mentor, and this, what you see on the slide, is also a model that is called the emotional learning system. And the emotional learning system is a learning system that talks about the learning of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence has 4 dimensions: self-awareness, self-regulation, and motivation, and then relationship skills, right? Mm-hmm. So self-awareness is the first step. And what you see here, the explore, the identify, the understand, the learn, those 4 steps actually a person can do by themselves. There is an assessment called ESAP, and through that assessment, they get scores, they get their profile, they get a graph. It helps them to interpret the scores so they know at what stage or what's their EQ score. Just like we have IQ, we have EQ scores. Mm-hmm. So they know that they can do by themselves. So the self-awareness and the self-regulation, they can do by themselves. But then what? So how would they improve themselves? How would they develop themselves? And that is where from step 5 to step 10, this is where I'm saying that a mentor can come in and help in that process. So that is where, say the mentee is having a bad day or a bad week in the workplace. They're feeling demotivated. So that's the third pillar of emotional intelligence, of motivating, self-motivation. So they can talk with the mentor, talk it out, hash it out. What is it that is demotivating them? Say maybe there is a change that's happening in the organization. They're moving to a new system and this person is not able to figure out the system and feeling frustrated and, just not feeling that they are up to it and they want to quit and whatnot. So that mentor can be that person where they can go to and they get that feedback from the mentor. So the other thing is when they're in teamwork and they are having conflicts with team members or the team leader and whatnot. So they can come back to the mentor and do some reflection of what is it about this person that triggers me? Why do I feel so irritated? Why do I respond in this way? So what you are seeing And of course, when I say, why did I even think about the mentor? Because one of the functions of mentors in the mentoring literature we see is a mentor is more often than not is a role model for the mentee. So what you see in number 5 is the observing the model and learning from the mentor herself or himself. And then the 6th step is practicing that, the mentee practices that behavior. Then they observe and record the new behavior. They may record it in a journal or reflective journal kind of activity. And they see what results. Hopefully they are getting positive results from the new behavior that they learned from the mentor. Then they apply the new behavior in varied contexts, what we see in step 9. Mm-hmm. So they know that, okay, now that I've learned how to talk in this situation, so I apply this in different other contexts. And then finally, I make it an intentional habit on my part, that I consciously choose to do this every time this kind of situation arises. So that is where I'm saying that the mentor will help the mentee through various kinds of activities. Reflection is one of them, and they could build it into the IDP when they sit one-on-one, when they first start the mentoring and they work out an individual development plan, the IDP, they can put this in the IDP and they can go from there.
That's a great practical tool. Yeah, that's a great practical tool, Rimjhim.
And then, so what I'm showing at this is my last slide, is that as you see, self-aware, self-regulate, self-motivate, and finally social awareness, where you have the skills of empathy and perspective taking of what the other person is thinking. You put yourself in the other person's shoes, and that goes a great distance in being able to work in teams and work in groups and do collaborative work. So I'm saying that in a new environment, especially when the mentee is new to the organization, and if they get a mentor, they would go through this kind of transformational journey of being more emotionally intelligent, from being self-aware all the way to social awareness. The mentor at the very corner of the slide is, just with the hands, just waiting to hold him or her if they come back, I'm not able to do that.
That's a great image.
But that's it. That's just my thought. This has not been tested, obviously, but it's a conceptual framework I have right now.
That's great. That's great. So what do you view as the most important organizational factors for successful mentoring?
So most successful, there are 2 things, I think. One is that organizations would evaluate their mentoring efforts rather than just having a program and think that they're done with it. They have set up a program, so they're good. Mm-hmm. It would be great if they would really evaluate the effectiveness of those programs. And not just by just doing surveys, but going a little bit more deeper and looking at the impact and looking at the performance of the mentees over a period of time, and so on and so forth. So that would be great if they supported it in a meaningful way. Mm-hmm. And secondly, I have read a lot about minority mentees. So we're talking about women, we're talking about people of color, different sexual orientations, who, when they are in organizations, they would like to be mentored probably, or they identify with similar people. And a lot of times that's not the case. They don't find, again, a lot of leadership is still white men. And it's hard to find those mentors that they're really looking for, those role models. So organizations may, expand mentoring to those minority mentees to mentors that are members of professional organizations. And, so those people, even though they're not in the organization where they work, but, they can be mentored by somebody in their field who's in the same industry, maybe. I'm talking about, say, women engineers. There are not many women engineers, but if they are paired or if they are connected with mentors, other senior women engineers in the same field, whatever that engineering field may be, then the junior woman engineer may, find that role model, find how to navigate and things like that. So those are the two I can think about.
Very important to think about. I call the first phenomenon pair and pray, when organizations just kind of pair people and then pray that it goes well, as opposed to having that continuity in the evaluation. The evaluation is so important because really, how are you going to know that your investment of time and resources and money has been worth it? Why not be able to capitalize on those things? And actually, the evaluation, it's not that intensive. It's important, but I think people overestimate the amount of sweat labor that goes into it, so to speak. So really important piece. So what most excites you about current developments in mentoring?
Well, one of the things that has fascinated me is the fact that a lot of reverse mentoring is being looked at. And a part of it is also that we have these 4 generations of cohorts that are in the workplace right now, right from baby boomers to the Generation Zs. And, so yes, they are having a wonderful time working with each other and not so wonderful time. And, they're not always the baby boomer is mentoring a millennial, but in some respects, it can happen the other way around. So, for example, technology, the use of technology in communication is something that the millennials and Generation Zs are very comfortable with, and baby boomers and Generation X are probably not. So, they could very well be, very well benefit from reverse mentoring them if people that are younger than them would be that mentor for them only in that area, maybe not holistically, but
Yeah, it's super exciting. And one of the things that's so exciting about millennials and Gen Z is they don't, for us Gen Xers and baby boomers, we always thought of mentoring as a nice to have, but for the millennials and the Gen Zs, it's really an expectation. So allowing them an opportunity to do some mentoring of their own can be a great way to engage them, as well as to kind of meet them where they're at in terms of that need for developmental conversations. So super exciting. All right, last question for you. How can folks find you?
Okay, so my email address, I think I have provided you, but I am available on LinkedIn. So if someone has a LinkedIn, they can put in there and they'll find me. But my email address is rimjee@sfcollege.edu.
Great. We'll make sure to include that, a link to that as well, and you'll see it on the next slide.
I had my card with me.
That we've got. I think we'll make sure that information for sure is in the notes and in the final slide. So Dr. Rimjhim Banerjee-Batist, thank you so much. I learned so much from you in this conversation. I'm so excited to see how your research on attachment theory, on emotional intelligence, and on your upcoming COVID research really influences the field of mentoring. It's super exciting. Thanks for your time and your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you.